Are Canadians in the process of saying goodbye to your natural health products? No more ginseng, no more health product supplements. Is that where we're headed? Well, if you listen to Health Canada, it seems like that's where we are going. And so this is an important issue that we want to talk about today.
A clear path forward requires looking back and learning. Good public policy requires human connection. It's a consideration of the facts, applying common sense and innovation. It's urban, it's rural, it's real life. We all have something to contribute. We all have a responsibility to get informed because there's a little piece of Canada in all of us, isn't there? Let's learn on this path together. This is Leaders on the Frontier.
Shawn Buckley is the president of the Natural Health Products Association of Canada. He's also a constitutional lawyer, and he's with me here today to talk about Health Canada regulations. Welcome, Shawn.
David, so good to be on your show.
Well, Shawn, what the heck is going on? Is Health Canada buckling down? Are they using regulations to, frankly, bully and put out of business natural health products in our country?
So, David, we're in the end game. So I've been practicing as a lawyer in this field for 29 years. In fact, in 1994, I was introduced to the regulations, shall we say, of natural health products when I was acting for Health Canada in a court case. So I started on Health Canada's side, and then I ended up moving to the other side, and I've spent about half of my career acting against Health Canada on behalf of natural health product manufacturers and practitioners and the like. And I've been called as an expert witness in Parliament on this issue. For my entire career, Health Canada has wanted to get rid of natural health products.
Sorry, you're saying for your entire career, you've sensed that Health Canada's wanted to do this?
Yeah, they've been put off by citizen pressure. So, so I can give you a little bit of the history, but maybe I'll just share with you how I got involved with this, because it'll illustrate how important this is from both a legal philosophical perspective and just from a health perspective. So I told you, I'd started actually acting for Health Canada. And so what happened was there was a herbalist named Jim Strauss in Kamloops who was importing a bunch of herbs from the United States, perfectly legal for him to import, and Health Canada seized them at the border. So he's suing Health Canada because Health Canada stole his herbs. And so I ended up acting for Health Canada in that lawsuit. Now, Health Canada internally, and I'll tell you that they waived solicitor-client privilege. It would have been back in, I think, 1995 or 1996, so I could act for Jim Strauss in another matter. So I'm free to talk about this. But they would refer to me as a rogue herbalist. And they would explain to me, can you believe this? This rogue herbalist is selling unapproved treatments. And I knew nothing about this. I drank the Kool-Aid and I thought, oh, is this ever reckless? Here we've got somebody selling unapproved treatments. Now, it's important for everyone to understand, David, all natural products were unapproved. Our drug regulations were designed for chemical drugs. They were never designed for natural health products. We've learned that chemical drugs are so dangerous that we've created this regulatory environment where basically you cannot put one on the market. They're presumed to be unsafe. They're presumed to not work. And you have to prove to Health Canada they're safe. You have to prove to Health Canada they work. And then and only then can you get a license and allow them to be used. Well, that makes tremendous sense for dangerous chemical drugs because they are three of the five leading causes of death in every Western nation are linked to chemical pharmaceutical drugs.
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
3 out of 5 of the 5 leading causes of death, although 2 of them usually are hidden from the public, are linked to chemical pharmaceutical drugs. The point I'm making is that as a category, they carry a tremendous risk. Now, so this is all fine and good. If you want to use thalidomide to treat nausea in pregnancy, well, you better prove it's safe and effective. We'd all agree with that.
Right.
But you know, if we've been using ginger tea for 2,000 years to treat nausea during pregnancy, surely all of a sudden that doesn't have to be illegal, does it? Do you mean really? All of a sudden the government can tell us we can't use ginger tea to treat nausea in pregnancy after 2,000 years of safe and effective use?
So you're making the case, Shawn, that we need good regulation, we need to have smart regulation, but we have recognized the risks of chemical drugs and said, you've got to prove it to me as a regulator that your drug is safe. But over here are natural health products, which are really a different category. So it's like an orange versus a banana, if I could say.
Oh, it's night and day. And the point I'm trying to make is everyone's going, oh, well, we need tight regulations on natural health products. We need regulations on natural health products. Well, understand, for almost all of your life, David, they've been completely unregulated. Did you feel like we didn't have any regulations until 2004? That's when we moved halfway into the chemical drug model with the natural health product regulations. But it took us probably about 12 years to get the industry mostly compliant. So almost for your whole life, every natural health product you went into a health food store, almost everything you bought has been unregulated.
Okay.
And in the United States, they're unregulated. Do you feel unsafe when you order from the United States because the products are like 3/4 cheaper? They cost just a fraction because our regulations have driven up the prices dramatically. So where low income people can't regulate them. But let me get back to this story. I was just making the point, the Health Canada is saying, ooh, can you believe this rogue herbalist is selling unapproved treatments? So I go to court and I have his case dismissed. He's suing the federal government in the wrong court. But he and I got along well. And I later started my own firm. And he, in another effort to have him shut down, the province of British Columbia charged him with practicing medicine without a license. So the act that gave the doctors their medical monopoly said only doctors can practice medicine, and the practice of medicine was defined so broadly as to include making treatment claims. Well, he couldn't stop saying that he could cure heart disease. He drove around in a big white van covered in red letters, "We cure heart disease." He was religious about saying he could cure heart disease. And David, why he was religious about that? He was an older gentleman. He flew for the German Air Force in World War II. He was an Austrian. And his family had been traditional healers in Austria for 4 centuries. So over 400 years, his family had been traditional healers, and he was trained by his grandparents to be a traditional healer. He just had this expertise that was unbelievable. But he had no interest in that at all. So he got a PhD in electrical engineering. He's working as an electrical engineer for BC Hydro, and he has a heart attack. He's rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. They do an angiogram, and he's got one artery 100% blocked and another 80% blocked. And they say, "Jim, you need a double bypass surgery to survive." And he thinks, I don't like that idea. He checks himself out. He makes the heart drops. He cures himself. He died in an old folks home 30 years later, never having a bypass surgery. And he thought, okay, I've got to share this with the world. So he quits his job and he starts into the family business. Now he's interested. I'm dead on the facts. He's making treatment claims. He's not a doctor. The law says only doctors can make treatment claims. So I decide to attack the law as being unconstitutional because we have freedom of expression in Section 2B of our charter. And here we have a law that prohibits expression except by doctors. And the law was on my side. I do the legal research, and this is probably like 1995, 1996, when our charter actually meant something. And when I say the law's on my side, I'm not worried about the law. I'm worried about the facts. Because if I have a judge accepting Health Canada's narrative that this is a rogue herbalist selling an unapproved treatment. And think of the danger, Judge. What if somebody delays proper approved treatment and dies?
Mm-hmm.
Or, or worse, or not worse, but or is, disabled? There is a public danger here. It doesn't matter if the law's on my side. The judge is going to do everything he or she can not to rule for me, just as you or I would. Like oh my gosh, I'm going to hurt people. So I've got to get around this narrative. So I go and I have a meeting at Jim's herb shop. And I say, Jim, is there any way we can show you're telling the truth? Like, I know you'll tell your story, but you're the defendant. It'll seem a little self-serving. And like, is there any other evidence? Well, David, he goes into the back and he brings me out boxes. It was either 3 or 5. I forget now. I remember it was an odd number. These boxes were filled with letters that people just felt compelled to write to him. And they were all the same. Like, so we're talking, how many letters are in 3 or 5 boxes? Like thousands and thousands of letters. And they're all the same. I had heart disease. I was sick. I was dying. I took your heart drops. Like, God bless you. Those letters are useless in court. I can't admit them. They're hearsay. But I can call the authors of those letters to take the stand, swear to tell the truth and tell the truth. And that's the highest level of evidence. So I start phoning these people. On the day of trial, I had 5 middle-class professionals. And I chose middle-class professionals just because the judge is a middle-class professional. So, no credibility issues. They had all had heart disease. They had all had at least 1 open heart bypass surgery. One of them had had 2. They all continued to have heart disease because the reason their arteries were plugging up was not being addressed. They all needed another bypass surgery. 2 of them were too weak to survive the surgery, so they were sent home to die. And the other 3 weren't willing to go through it again just to buy another year or 2 of life because it was so invasive. So for them, the approved treatments were now a dead end. They all come across the heart drops. They all get well. David, they had all been disabled for years and years and years and years. They're all working full-time at trial.
Wow.
You can't fake that. You can't fake being on disability for a decade and then working full-time. So that was my road to Damascus experience, because when I was working for Health Canada against the herbalist and accepting without thinking, I thought the danger was allowing people to sell unapproved treatments. But after I prepared for that trial, I realized, no, actually the danger is not to allow consenting adults to decide how they are going to treat themselves and be the best judges for their own health. And the danger was removing that single treatment from the market. And I could have given you the names, addresses, and phone numbers of thousands of Canadians who were only alive because of that single product. So we're talking actually now life and death. So when we say, when Health Canada is telling us, and I'll explain shortly how we're going to lose these treatments, like 100% we're going to lose them. And Health Canada says, well, but we need the stricter regulations to protect you. Health Canada never does a balanced risk analysis to ask, well, what's the risk of removing these products? I mean, I could go on and give you example after example. I mean, I had a case where the court agreed, well, you were breaking the law, but it was legally necessary or there'd be more deaths. Like, we're talking life and death.
So these are very powerful stories, Shawn, that illustrate that within our healthcare system and community, there are a variety of choices and treatments available. And one of those choices or ranges of treatments has to do with natural health products, period. So now let's move forward to June. There's a bill, C-47, that was introduced, correct?
Yeah. So, well, that was just our budget bill, but Health Canada snuck something in there. So what is happening, David, is, remember I told you we moved halfway into a chemical drug model in 2004, which was interesting. So the chemical drug regulations were never intended for natural products, But they became so popular in North America that both the FDA and the states and Health Canada started attacking them, basically saying you had to comply with these chemical drug regs. And so products were disappearing, companies were going under, and citizens rebelled. But what's interesting is the citizen rebellions led to opposite results. So in the United States, Congress was forced to look into how should we regulate natural health products. And they passed the law, the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994, where they classed them as foods.
Okay.
And they actually put a legal presumption. They're presumed by law to be safe because they looked into it and said, this is silliness, FDA, to presume there's a danger. They're presumed by law to be safe. And the FDA can only take a single one off the market if the FDA has actual evidence, that that product is a risk.
I see. So in other words, in the United States, they said, look, these natural health products are really food. They should be in that category. They're relatively safe. So putting on the drug regulatory framework would be like taking a sledgehammer to a fly kind of thing.
Absolutely. So in the United States, you don't need government pre-approval to sell a natural product for a therapeutic purpose. So you can sell ginger tea for nausea, like we have been for 2,000 years. So, but in Canada, we did the opposite. We had a citizen rebellion. Standing Committee of Health holds broad consultations and says we shouldn't regulate these as drugs and don't pretend they're unsafe. But Health Canada drags its feet for 6 years after the recommendations come out and then imposes chemical drug regulations. So in the US, they're a food. In Canada, they're a drug. In the US, they're presumed by law to be safe. In Canada, they're presumed by law to be unsafe.
Wow.
We have to prove they're safe. In the US, you don't need government pre-approval. In Canada, now we do.
So we have a complete different regulatory regime, ironically, between the United States and Canada when it comes to natural health food products. So June comes along and they put something into a bill. There's a number of components in Bill C-47 as I read it. And one of them has to do with what when it comes to natural health food products?
Okay. So, and this is why I was giving you the history. So we moved halfway into a drug model. We accepted it. The natural health product community stomached it because there were two concessions. So the first concession is you could use traditional use evidence to get through the efficacy requirement because we don't have intellectual property rights.
Right.
So without a patent, you can't get through the new drug approval process because you'll never recover your investment. So so we could use traditional use evidence, and probably 3/4 or more of natural health products that are licensed, it's licensed on traditional use evidence. And the other concession was we didn't have to pay the licensing fees.
What do you mean by traditional use evidence? What do you mean by that?
Well, if we've been using, ginger tea to treat nausea for 2,000 years and we have records of that, that's traditional use evidence.
Got it.
Let's say, David, you and I wanted to, let's say, God forbid, we had a currency collapse and trade collapse for 6 months and, Canada's not getting any citrus fruits and we're eating meat and potatoes and scurvy's come back. And you and I decide, well, let's have, a rosehip extract tea to treat scurvy because it'd be high in vitamin C. Well, we wouldn't have to run a double-blind clinical trial.
Yeah, of course.
We could rely on the British naval records that show that vitamin C treats scurvy. That's what I mean, is there's a lot of evidence. I mean, there were, treatment manuals and books because before chemical drugs are a recent thing. There's a whole body of evidence on using natural products to treat. Most of our drugs are derived by natural products that work, and it's just the molecules tweaked so it's now a novel chemical and it's patented. So that's what I mean by traditional use evidence. So now Health Canada's come out with what's called a self-care framework, where they're saying, no, we're going to move you fully into the chemical drug model where you are regulated exactly like chemical drugs. And I'll just work through the things. So the one thing you're referring to is, so in Bill C-47, our budget, Health Canada snuck in provisions at sections 500 to 504 that basically there's a set of penalties for the chemical pharmaceutical drugs. And that Health Canada has special powers over the chemical pharmaceutical drugs because they are so dangerous. They never applied to natural health products. And when they were brought in 2014, Health Canada and the government made it clear these are not appropriate for natural health products that don't carry the same level of risk. But be that as it may, they snuck into the federal budget provisions that now make those apply. So before June 22nd, if you were a natural health product company or a naturopathic doctor, for example, and you violated the regulations, the maximum penalty you faced was $5,000. Now it's gone up to $5 million for every day you're in violation.
5 million every day.
Yeah, and I don't know of a practitioner or a natural health product company that could handle that. Now Pfizer can. That's pocket change for them. Do you see how ridiculous this is?
Yeah.
Another element of this is we're going to lose the right to use traditional use evidence. Well, we're probably going to lose 3/4 of our products there. The drug licensing fees and site licensing fees that they promised wouldn't apply are now going to be applied. That was already gazetted in the Canada Gazette. So prices are going to go up and we're going to lose products. Well, David, prices are already ridiculous. It's interesting. I was on a Twitter Spaces call with a practitioner, a natural health practitioner, who sets up, he's consulted by both Americans and Canadians. And he was saying, the same treatment protocol for Canadians costs about 4 times as much. And that's solely because of our regulations already driving up the prices. Well, it means that lower income Canadians no longer have the option of using natural remedies. They're already locked into a chemical drug model, which is far more dangerous and especially for chronic illnesses, way less effective.
So this is going to have a serious impact on the availability of natural remedies, a whole series of product lineups, because they can't afford this regulatory framework that's really being slapped on them by Health Canada. So what should people do? What should they be doing in this situation?
Yeah, well, I'll just also say they're not going to license professional products. So anything that, your naturopathic doctor, traditional Chinese practitioners, any of them use, no, you have to go through the new drug approval process that you can't. So the goal is to get rid of most of our products. We're going to still have vitamins and minerals. We're going to have single ingredient products, maybe a couple of combinations, but in label amounts that are meaningless. And our practitioners will be gone because they won't have the meaningful products anymore. So this is part of international harmonization to move us fully into a chemical drug model.
Wow.
It's no accident the World Health Organization is now looking into how should we regulate natural health products.
So this isn't just about getting rid of natural health products. It's also going to punt out of the health business, so to speak, the practitioners that are naturopaths, like the Chinese traditional herbalists won't be in business. Is that what you're saying?
Well, absolutely. Because if they don't have products to help us with, how are they going to stay? Why would you even go to them?
Right. But this goes for all kinds of traditional medicine over many years. Like I can think of Aboriginal practitioners to Chinese. I mean, there's a myriad of this history. I should tell you on a personal note, my great-grandfather was a physician from Germany, and he was very much practiced in herbal medicine as part of it. It was all part of the regimen of practicing medicine with herbs as well. So he wouldn't have been in business either.
Oh, no, absolutely. So this is the train wreck, and you asked me what can people do. So hopefully you can post the website, but I'm part of a group called the Natural Product Protection Association, as you indicated, and our website is nhppa.org. And I'd like your viewers to do a couple of things. First of all, we have a subscribe page where you can give us your name and your email address. Please subscribe, because we're going to be doing campaign after campaign after campaign. And we're also going to be doing things like, call outs for volunteers. We don't send a lot of emails, but it's really our only surefire way to communicate with you. Obviously, follow our social media channels and the like. But also, David, we need people to start donating to us monthly. We have a mechanism there where you can, set it up so that you donate monthly, even if, it's $25 or $50 a month. Because we're setting up some structures, which I'll share with you, that are quite exciting, and we need to hire people to manage this. We're going to be, like the NCI, largely doing volunteers, but the reality is to win this fight, and we think it's going to be a year-long campaign.
Wow.
We need support. So we're setting up a team to basically get every natural health practitioner's office to be an interface for us. And we're also going to be tying them in with, kind of a wider network of physicians and naturopaths and healthcare practitioners of all stripes. And this other organization is basically creating an alternative healthcare system.
Mm-hmm.
And there's safety in numbers. So, if the homeopathic doctors are getting attacked, and you've got all of the practitioners in a single organization, they can stand up together and actually be a force. We
Okay.
also we need people. The problem is we've all allowed our institutions to be taken over,
Mm.
and we actually need to get people involved in all levels of governments and institutions. So we're partnering with a bunch of other groups to basically do nationally what Take Back Alberta is doing on a smaller scale in Alberta, where we're going to be creating community organizations in all 338 federal ridings. It will be organized provincially because federal ridings are organized provincially. And then we'll also go municipal and right down to the school board level. But basically to teach and empower people to join all three parties. If you lean NDP, well, join the NDP party. If you're liberal, join the liberal. If you're conservative, join conservative. But you have to get involved in party politics and insist that our politicians are responsive on health issues and freedom issues, because that's where the power is.
Hmm.
The problem is we've allowed ourselves not to be involved. And those are just a couple of the campaigns. We're also going to have to organize against the media, mainstream media, and the whole thing. But for whatever reason, we seem to be a lightning rod. But David, this is the most exciting thing, that Health Canada is taking away our access to natural health products, because the last two times they tried, we had the largest citizen rebellions in Canadian history, 98 and 2008.
Wow.
People get mad, and we can get the natural health product community mad, and the freedom groups also want to be involved in this fight. So it's a test case. Can we get Parliament responsive? And the only two things we want is basically we want harmonization with the US. Don't treat these like drugs. Regulate them as foods. We shouldn't need government pre-approval to use ginger tea for nausea, for crying out loud. And also get us out of the World Health Organization, because ultimately that's what this is a part of. And, I think people would be shocked about things like the treaty that we can't call a treaty, and that we would be basically giving up our right to decide how we're going to handle health issues during a pandemic. Like, people would be shocked.
Well, look, so Shawn, you've referred us to a website. There's opportunities for people to get involved if they share your policy concerns about this issue. And I think part of the irony to this is that our healthcare system in Canada, despite having wonderful people in it, is certainly not ranked as one of the best healthcare systems in the country. It's certainly one of the most expensive. We need choices when it comes to treatment. And what better person to decide that than, yourself? So I think this is the paradox, is it not? That we have a state that's trying to, in effect, take away your choices that are fairly intelligent or could be part of your treatment regime. So there's a lot at stake here. There's a larger story, is there not, Shawn?
You're raising the most important issue, which is our rights issue. So who has sovereignty over your body? Is it you, or is it Health Canada? Because if we accept a drug model for anything but the chemical pharmaceutical drugs, and I mean, I agree they should be deemed illegal, and you have to go through this licensing regime. But if you apply them to natural products that we've been using for thousands of years, then the logical consequence of that is we won't have them as a choice. And let's not pretend that they're unsafe. David, you are 14 times more likely to be struck by lightning than to be harmed by a natural health product. Like, peanut butter is more dangerous than all of the natural health products on Canadian market, because in most given years, in fact, I'm not aware of I don't think Health Canada can point to a single death caused by a natural health product in all of Canadian history, which means that they're so few and far between that nobody can even document one. And yet peanut butter each year causes a number of deaths. So it's a statistical fact that peanut butter is more dangerous than the entire natural product industry. And yet here we have a risk of removing the product. So let's not even talk about danger like Health Canada does, but who should have the right to choose how to treat yourself? But accepting this drug model, Health Canada's got resources. They drive all these products off the market. So we actually don't have a choice because we've accepted this chemical drug model and say it applies to things other than chemical drugs. So it's absolutely ridiculous. There's already a large number of natural product treatments that are gone just because of our regulations.
Wow. So, Shawn, I'm wondering if part of the larger strategic picture is that it has to do with the regulatory process and who's in control of it. In an ideal world, we'd like to believe that there's a merit-based bureaucracy that's neutral, that's really looking at evidence-based information. But we know that in the case of the United States, Big Pharma has really, to a large degree, taken over the regulatory process. Sadly, I would never believe it if someone had told this to me 10 years ago. But all the evidence points in that direction. And I say this, studying this matter carefully. Is the same dynamic happened in Canada from your perspective? I don't mean to put you on the spot in terms of that question, but is that the danger of what's happened, that the pharmaceutical industry has taken over that regulatory process and now wants to impose that same regulatory process that they run basically onto others, including natural health products?
So now, first of all, so accepting that, it's dangerous to speculate about why things are, you have to understand that Health Canada is not there to protect your health. I can point you to court transcripts where I've had Health Canada inspectors on the stand, and they're quite clear, they're not there to protect our health. They are there to enforce the Food and Drug Act and regulations. And the Food and Drug Act and regulations, there's nothing in there about protecting health. There's nothing in there about getting good health outcomes. There's nothing in there about even, acting in the public interest. And as, Alan Castles, a professor at the University of Victoria, explained quite clearly when he testified at the National Citizens Inquiry, our drug regulations are to protect intellectual property rights. And I've lectured on that for decades, that our drug regulations aren't there to protect health. They're there to protect intellectual property rights. Health Canada, most of their budget comes from fees they charge the chemical drug companies. I mean, it's a classic conflict of interest. But if you thought they were there to protect your health, which Health Canada isn't, but if they were there to protect our health, they would be in a conflict. You then can't have them collecting their salaries from the chemical drug companies that they're there to regulate. And they refer in their internal communications to the chemical drug companies as their client. Now, I don't know if you know about Dr. Shiv Chopra, but he was a drug approval scientist for Health Canada, I think, for 30 years. And he became a whistleblower, and he forced the Senate to call him and 4 other drug approval scientists as witnesses into Health Canada corruption. And one of them, Dr. Margaret Hayden, in a CBC interview after her testimony, explained that as a drug approval scientist at Health Canada, you come to learn how, when you recommend that a drug not be approved, how the senior management are going to run around your decisions. So let this sink in for your audience, David. So here we have a Health Canada drug approval scientist who will then decide that it's not, a drug shouldn't be approved. It's not safe. It's not effective. The risks outweigh the benefits. So she's making a recommendation a drug shouldn't be approved. And she says, well, after you've been at Health Canada for a while, you learn how they're going to run around their own scientists. And what she explained is what the management does. And this is just classic, nobody can be responsible, is the management will appoint a panel of outside experts The outside experts will then recommend the drug be approved, but you don't know who voted yes or no, so no single person is liable there. And then the management just follows the recommendation of the experts. So how can the management be liable? Well, there's this outside panel of experts, and we're just adopting the recommendation. And this happens time and time and time again.
Wow.
Well, I don't know if you call that corruption, but I'm deeply troubled that when Health Canada's own internal drug approval experts will recommend that a drug not be approved, that time and time and time again they're run around with this procedure.
So you've shared a lot of information today, Shawn, with the impacts of C47. It's not over yet, and you're really challenging us to open our eyes and look at this important issue. So if they want more information, they can look at the website. They could probably talk to their naturopath or also herbalists. Is that a fair comment? That those would be good resources?
So at the nhppa.org site, so yes, please visit, and as I say, subscribe, and please support us financially, because we are in a war, and the time's past where we can sit on our laurels, both with our time and our finances. But we've got basically a 2-page document that outlines, the Reader's Digest of what's going on, and then we have a 35-page discussion paper written for the industry. If you want the real meat about what's going on. Right now, we have a campaign to put pressure on all MPs. We teach you how to meet with your MP. We teach you how to write a letter. If you're not willing to write a letter, we've got a form letter there. And we're going to be running other campaigns to equip you. So this is one of those things where literally we've got a couple of years left, and we're going to lose these products. We're literally going to be in a cage where they're handing us the chemicals through the bars, because that's the only options we'll have, and we will not have access to truthful health information. So, David, they're going to be collecting these fees that they said they would never collect, and they say they're going to hire inspectors, and these inspectors are going to go out into the marketplace and censor truthful health information. Now, that's not how they're wording it. They're out there to make sure that everyone is following the rules, but we basically, Health Canada takes the position that companies and practitioners cannot share truthful health information publicly, that all they're allowed to do is when you're granted a license, there'll be a label claim. So for example, there's a company in Alberta called True Hope that sells a vitamin and mineral supplement for bipolar disorder. It's likely the most effective treatment for bipolar disorder in the world. David, there are 35 peer-reviewed, published journal articles, all funded by governments around the world. So not a single one funded by this company. Governments around the world have been so impressed with this product that they've stumped up public money. I mean, the Alberta government coughed up $500,000 for a double-blind clinical trial on this product. Like, it impresses governments. So this is government-funded research, peer-reviewed, most of it in blue chip journals like Journal of Psychiatry, Journal of Child and Adolescent Psychopharmacology. And it is illegal for True Hope to share those journal publications with the public. All they're allowed to say is their label claims, such as supports mental health and well-being. Now, they used to share that until June 22nd, when their only liability would be like a $5,000 fine. But now that it's a $5 million per day fine, they have taken that information down. The censorship noose is tightening dramatically, and practitioners can't advertise truthfully about what treatments they have and what they can do for you. So it's really scary what's going on.
Wow. Well, this has certainly been an eye-opening conversation with you, Shawn Buckley, President of the Natural Health Food Products Association of Canada, and also constitutional lawyer. Thank you so much for your hard work and leadership on this important matter.
David, thank you for having me on your show, and it's just a pleasure to see you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching Leaders on the Frontier. We're a nonpartisan think tank. We explore ideas, policy, and practical solutions that can make a difference in the lives of Canadians. We do not accept any government funding. We work for you. Thank you for supporting Frontier. Visit fcpp.org to give. While you're there, be sure to check out our latest articles and research. Without open discussion and debate, you're not thinking, nor are you free. Comment below. We'd love for you to join the conversation.